The tooth, tongue, and openings to the salivary glands are all found within the oral cavity. After the oral cavity, you have the throat, or oropharynx. Remember, pharynx, not pharynx. And then a muscular tube follows that leads from the mouth to the stomach. What's that muscular tube called? Can you find a diagram in your book that shows this tube leading from the pharynx, oropharynx, to the stomach? Yeah, it's called the esophagus. Don't confuse that with the trachea. You don't want to be getting food down the wrong windpipe, so to speak. If you open the Q drive and look at the file called Digestive Models, you're probably there now because you were looking at the tooth model a moment ago, you can follow along. First you have a slide of the salivary glands, and then you follow along on a series of slides that follow the model. That's kind of like the one on page 774 of your textbook. So turn there now. The esophagus is the first place that we encounter peristalsis, a wave-like contraction of the muscle that moves food along the GI tract. Peristalsis. This is a wave-like contraction. It moves food through our GI tract, and it's also the way that snails move, seemingly gliding along. All of the tubes of the GI tract have 4 major layers. You can see these layers on page 783 of your textbook. Starting at the inside, there is the mucosa. Working outward, we have the submucosa, then the muscularis, and on the outside, the serosa. So mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and serosa. These are the 3 main layers. All through the digestive tract, we encounter these, did I say 3? That's probably 4 last time I checked. And all through the digestive tract, we encounter these 4 layers. That is to say, these 4 layers are present in the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, which we also call the colon, and then on through to the rectum as well. They all evolved from the same simple digestive tube of our primitive forebears. After the esophagus, we encounter the stomach, an organ that stores food and does some digestion, although most digestion takes place in the small intestines. Turn to page 788 of your textbook for a diagram of the stomach. Look also at the next slide on the Q drive, and you'll find parts of the anatomy there on those photos. The stomach is divided into several regions. The first part is called the cardiac region. What does cardiac refer to? I thought I heard you say heart. That's correct. You're so smart. This region of the stomach is called the cardium because of its proximity to the heart. It's the upper portion, closest to the heart. This also explains why the region where the esophagus joins the stomach is called the esophageal cardiac junction. There is a valve here that lets food into the stomach from the esophagus. This valve is a sphincter muscle. Remember that sphincter muscles are circular, going all the way around the GI tube. This valve keeps food in the stomach from backing up into the esophagus. The failure of this valve may allow acid to ooze into the esophagus and create what's called heartburn. Gee, why does that always feel like it's in the heart when you have heartburn? Well, I guess it's because of the proximity of the cardiac region to the heart. As I'm writing this lecture, I'm having breakfast, and I can't help but hope that everything is working okay as I chew my toast and swallow my coffee. We take this system for granted until something goes wrong. Anyone getting heartburn yet? I've been told that my audios tend to do that. Well, you're not alone. Well, back to the stomach. Look again at the diagram in your text and the Q drive photo on the model. Notice the various regions of the stomach. After the cardiac region, there's the bulbous fundus that is superior to the esophageal cardiac junction. I like to say that as often as possible because it makes me feel so smart. Esophageal cardiac junction. The curvature of the body of the stomach creates a short side and a long side, known as the lesser and greater curvatures. Imagine that. Notice that the empty stomach has a rough layer throughout. This rough layer that you can see with your naked eye is called gastric fold, or the gastric folds, or gastric rugae. Rugae means rough. When the stomach is full, these folds stretch out, allowing a great quantity of food to be consumed. Could you see some adaptive reason to have a stomach? Why do we have a stomach? To store food for a period of time. The last region of the stomach is the pylorus, and the stomach ends at another valve, another sphincter, the pyloric sphincter, which controls food entering into the small intestine. So when food leaves the stomach, where does it go? If you said the small intestine, you're correct, but not specific enough. Let's talk about the small intestine next.